there. Hi, this is Dr. Tirath Gill. I was thinking about delving into the life of Sigmund Freud and his contributions to the field of psychiatry and psychology. So Freud was born in the 1850s, I think 1853, to a family of Hasidic Jews. These are Orthodox Jews in the far eastern part of Europe, likely about 100 miles north of Vienna. And his father was a wool merchant, and they were okay. His father was always struggling to find a job, and in that context he moved his family to Vienna. And Vienna was a very cultured town, a lot of academics, Jewish community, and was the seat of much intellectual debate and thought. And there was a real sense that new discoveries were on the horizon. So everybody was open to new ideas. So Freud actually, he was raised by his father in that city. He went to medical school around 17 or 18 and became a specialist in neurology, and worked initially with, he studied philosophy, studied zoology, and of course he studied medicine of that day. And he was a very curious man. He was a polyglot. That means he knew many languages, Latin, of course German, English, and he even knew some Middle Eastern languages like Arabic. So and the Hasidic language of the Torah. So he was well educated, very perceptive, and eager. He was an intellectual daredevil in some ways. He, although his family was Orthodox, he wasn't necessarily Orthodox himself. In fact, his views were more on the atheistic spectrum. So he began work with Joseph Breuer. He was kind of his mentor. Joseph Breuer was also a physician, a physiologist, and was a very thoughtful person who mentored Freud, tolerated his eccentricities, his views sometimes that he thought were off the deep end. For example, when Freud and Joseph Breuer, were doing therapy on the patient Anna O, she would be asked to recount her past difficulties, her past traumas. And Freud invariably tended to link the patient's neuroses or their symptoms with history of some type of sexual molestation or abuse, or some complex in regards to their sexuality. And Joseph Breuer was, I think, more balanced in his views. He actually thought that neurosis could be caused by many different type of traumatic events, or periods of emotionally painful events in the past. In the sense that he was an intellectual daredevil, he went to France for 3 months to work with a famed neurologist. He was actually an anatomist, but then neurology was his secondary pursuit, and psychology as well. The man was John Martin Charcot, a French psychiatrist, physician, and he saw how he would interview patients, demonstrate in front of audience the tendency for some patients to get hypnotized, and how that worked. He was very impressed, and took this back to him to Vienna when he returned, and tried to use it in his office settings. He would have a comfortable couch, and he would ask the patient to lie there and be comfortable. And he initially tried to use hypnosis, but later on he abandoned that and asked patients to just free associate. That's his term, free associate, just talk about whatever is on their mind. And from that he found that some people obtained relief. He also came up with the concept of transference. That is, individuals, when you are in contact with them, they will reenact their previous relationships with you, like especially with a therapist, because the therapist is said to be a reflective mirror, and then they get to project whatever they want onto that blank mirror, and patients would act out previous relationships. That was called transference. And he came up with that concept. Countertransference was the other side of this, where the clinician has strong negative or positive attitudes towards the patient based on their past. So he gave us those concepts. I think his main contribution is the idea of psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, wherein you allow the person to talk, express themselves, be non-judgmental, and make connections, throw out your theory, your hypothesis of what might be going on. And if it resonates with the patient, they will accept it, and they will adopt it, and they will benefit from it. He did discover that he actually wrote a lot. He was very well read. He read Kant, he read Immanuel Kant, he read Wells, he read Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, the great philosophers, Shakespeare. He was a fan of his. So he had a wealth of experience from many different diverse thinkers across the world. His ideas have don't always make sense. I personally can't make sense of some of those things, but that's not to say that all his ideas are useless. They may be pure conjecture, because he was fond of making grand postulations, he tended to overly generalize, like he would take an observation and try to generalize from that. That was his tendency, and Joseph Breuer recognized that. But anyway, despite all of these things, despite his tendency to overgeneralize, and he may have overstepped into or gone in the wrong direction, lurched in the wrong way, but overall he has made some useful contributions to psychiatry and to society at large. I think his main idea that trauma is significant in the life of an individual, and it needs to be acknowledged and appreciated so that you can get over it. He also came up with the idea of the unconscious, the subconscious, unconscious, and the conscious. He also came up with the idea of id, ego, superego, id being the libidinal, the basic drives, sex, hunger, shelter, those needs. And he gave us those concepts. And even if you don't agree that he put it together in the right way, it's worth commending him for thinking these things up, like thinking of these things and bringing these concepts to before society. Because without psychoanalysis, without psychotherapy, the practice of psychiatry would not be an art that it is. Anyhow, that's a little bit about Freud. Take care. Have a good day. It's a sunset. It's nice. The sunsets and the sunrises have been brilliant after the California fires, and it's very pretty.